This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of June 9th, 2024. Content authenticity statement: 100% of this week's newsletter was generated by me, the human, though the walkthrough video of how we're building custom GPTs and using the pair process obviously has AI outputs. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to learn why this kind of disclosure is a good idea and might be required for anyone doing business in any capacity with the EU in the near future. What's on my mind this week? Building high quality generative AI prompts with PARE. This week, I thought we'd step through the Trust Insights PARE framework in a lot more depth to explain why it works, what you can do with it, and what high density, high quality prompts could look like. Before we begin, let's state a clear purpose. The purpose of today's walkthrough is to help you build prompts that you can distribute to team members or integrate into software, which will in turn generate high quality results. This is different than the interactive, iterative, conversational prompting. We can go back and forth many times with the language model in conversation to dial in exactly what you want. That process is useful, it's effective, and it's a lot of fun, but it can be time consuming. It also doesn't scale well. Each time a person wants to accomplish a task, they need to have the same preparatory conversation to achieve the goal. Also, it doesn't insert itself well into other systems. If you try to turn that into something like a piece of software, enterprise software, doesn't work very well. That said, we will not denigrate that process because it's actually critically important for building high quality prompts. Let's also define what a high quality prompt is. A prompt you give to a language model that accomplishes a result in a reliable, repeatable way with minimal additional effort from the user. Call that routine. So, reliable, repeatable, routine. That is the magic formula for a high quality prompt. If a prompt does not fulfill all three of those conditions, it's no good. It's not high quality. So, with that, let's dig into the PAIR framework. It has four parts. Let me go ahead and bring it up here. It has four parts: prime, augment, refresh, and evaluate. In the free PDF worksheet, which is what we're looking at right now, I pose these as questions for folks to ask the AI who are just getting started out. This is sort of the beginner's version of how you use the framework, but this framework this framework goes much deeper than what's on the sheet. It's conceptual in nature, and none of what we're going to talk about today is on the sheet because I don't want to overwhelm people who are just getting started. So let's take a look at that first step: prime. Prime is all about getting as much relevant context into a conversation with an AI as possible. We prime it often by asking it, what does it know about a topic? Unless we know that it doesn't know that topic well. In those cases, we better be bringing our own data to the party. Remember that the first rule of preventing hallucination in generative AI is that the more data you bring to the party, the less likely the model is to hallucinate. You can test this for yourself, especially with a smaller model like Llama 3. Take that model, ask it, who's the CEO of your company? And watch it just make things up. Then provide a copy of your company's about page or your leadership team page. Ask it again and watch it nail the answer every single time because you brought the data with you. Second, augment. Augment on the worksheet is asking the model what questions it has. Conceptually, this is also about validating the priming data as well. Again, if the model demonstrates a lack of specific knowledge, we know we need to augment its knowledge with more data. Third is refresh. In the worksheet's asking the model what we forgot. In the bigger picture, this is asking the model almost say, what do you know about this topic? Again, now that I've given you all this data, right? We give it the prime data, we give it augmented data. So now we can validate it knows what we want it to know. On the worksheet, evaluate is asking the model to check its work. In the bigger picture, this is evaluating how the model performs with test questions and answers. In the toy example we just discussed, right? Be asking the model again, who's the CEO of the company? Now you've vetted all the information, it better get the information right. The PAIR framework is about more than just asking questions of the model. That's what we start people with so that it's usable and they can get benefit from it right away. But in the bigger picture, PAIR is about approaching the task of prompt engineering like software development, where the prompt is the code, right? The prompt is the code. Andre Karpathy said this at the beginning of last year, and it still holds true. The hottest programming language in the world is plain language now. You need a lot of ingredients to build software well. An idea of what you want to accomplish, someone who knows the domain well and can code, with language models, of course, everyone can code now. A set of defined processes for how you currently accomplish the task or how you know the task should be done, a language model and its associated data pipeline, and a benchmark for success. If this sounds familiar, and it should, this is the Trust Insights 5P framework, right? Purpose, people, process, platform, and performance. Once you've done the process and you're satisfied a model understands the subject well, you convert it to a prompt and get ready to deploy it. That's the overall process. So let's bring this to life with an example. Let's say we want to evaluate some legislation. In the USA, which is where I live, our elected representatives very often name pieces of legislation that, due to all the loopholes they build into the law, special interest carve-outs, all this stuff, the laws tend to achieve the opposite of what you think the legislation does. For example, back in the early days of the internet, the Can Spam Act was passed by Congress. It was supposed to clamp down on email spam. However, due to the way it was written, the influence of special interests and lobbyists, and the general lack of understanding that congressional representatives have of the internet and technology in general, a trend that persists today, it enabled more spamming than ever. Now, this is a rare case where the name of the act, Can Spam, actually was accurate. Like, this is how you can spam. Anyway, one of the things we as citizens should be doing is inspecting the proposed laws that our legislators are making before they become law and providing feedback about those proposed laws, drawing attention to things that aren't working well. After all, mainstream media has a tendency to over dramatize some things to get clicks and eyeballs and completely ignore other things that are really important because it's not a good story. It's not a compelling news bite. So it's our obligation as citizens and the obligation of citizens in most democracies to do the work ourselves. But we don't, not really. Some folks do, and they share what they found. But wouldn't it be nice if we could use the power and scale of generative AI and language models to inspect every single piece of proposed legislation for loopholes, unintended consequences, malicious intent, and flag it for attention? That would be a heck of a public service. So let's say we wanted to build such a creature. How would we go about it? We'd want it to be something everyone could use. We'd want it to clearly disclose its components and ingredients because any AI dealing in a high risk area like legislation and law should 100% be transparent and open to the public so that we can understand what has been told to do. And we want it to be fair, neutral, and as nonpartisan as possible. So to build such a thing, we're going to use the PARE framework. We'll prime it by asking it what it knows about the process, augment it with additional scenarios and questions, refresh its knowledge, and ultimately evaluate it against pieces of legislation after we've turned it into a prompt. So let's go ahead and do this. I'm going to do this in ChatGPT. You can do this in Gemini. You can do this in Claude. Yeah, you can do this in any ecosystem. But the catch I want you to remember is whatever system you're going to deploy in, you want to build in. So you don't want to do this process in Gemini and then deploy it in ChatGPT. It's not going to work as well. Our first thing, let's do the P, the prime. I'm also going to reference the RACE framework, the Trust Insights RACE framework, role, action, context, execute. But we're going to kind of blend the two together. Today, you're going to play the role of a congressional chief of staff with an expertise in reviewing legislation. You're skilled at understanding legislation, discerning the influence of special interests, and understanding how society will bring that legislation to life and implement it. Your first task is to explain the best practices for reviewing legislation. So this is the prime step. We're going to ask the model what it knows about this topic. It says reviewing legislation is a critical task for a congressional chief of staff, requiring a systematic review to ensure understanding and effective analysis. Here are the best practices: initial read through, purpose identification, scope and impact, detailed analysis, section by section breakdown, legal and technical language, stakeholder analysis, identify stakeholders, interest influence, fiscal impact assessment, compliance and enforcement, constitutional and legal considerations, review of legislative history and similar laws, public and political reactions, interagency and intergovernmental coordination, contingency planning, legislative process, continuous monitoring and feedback. Great. That's a good first start. How do you evaluate legislation and its potential second and third order effects or unintended consequences? Talk through how you evaluate legislation for this step by step. So again, we're now in the augment phase. It did a good job, but I see some things there. Like, I want to know how you think about unintended consequences, because that's something that happens a lot with laws. People pass a law and then they forget that real people have to bring these things to life. Real people have to explain what they're doing and why they're doing it. So we have here: define the primary effects, stakeholder mapping and analysis, scenario analysis, consultation with experts, review of similar historical legislation, economic modeling, social impact analysis, legal and regulatory analysis, behavior analysis, environmental and technological assessment, feedback loops and adaptation mechanisms, public consultation and transparency. Example, and this is some environmental examples. So that's really good. Now, the next thing I want to look for, great. How do you evaluate legislation to detect malicious intent, or intent where the legislation seeks to disadvantage a specific group of people, especially those groups who are already marginalized? So again, this is some more priming, more augmentation to have the tool come up with a lot of best practices for what we would want to look for in a piece of legislation. Ultimately, with legislative review, and this, by the way, it goes for any kind of review: code review, marketing review, business strategy review, accounting review. We want to sit down and say, what could go wrong? So we have here 10 more bullet points: initial read through, historical and social context, stakeholder mapping, consultation with advocacy and civil rights group, comparative analysis, intent and legislative history, legal and constitutional review, economic and social equity analysis, behavior and sociological analysis, transparency and accountability mechanisms. Example, a process evaluating a housing bill. Okay. So these are all really good processes. Now we want to get to the refresh stage and say, let's try to refresh our knowledge. Great. What I'd like you to do next is consolidate all these different ways of evaluating legislation into a single coherent framework. Build a complete, thorough, comprehensive outline for evaluating any piece of proposed or past legislation, taking into account all the different, I misspelled my count there, all the different aspects and angles we've talked about so far. Now we have quite a lot of the different pieces that it's coming up with. This is looking really good. This is going to be a complex, complicated prompt, right? We can see there's a lot of different items in here. So let's do this. Let's take our comprehensive framework. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to move this into a text file because I want to be able to reference it, the different pieces over time. And so we have the framework here, which is the bullet points. Great. Now let's convert this master outline into system instructions for a large language model like ChatGPT to use for evaluating legislation. The purpose of the system instructions is to build a custom GPT where a user can provide a piece of legislative text and have the GPT evaluate it and provide an analysis of the legislation, the different considerations you've outlined, what could go wrong or have unintended consequences, the detection of malicious intent or special interests seeking to disadvantage people unfairly. Write the system instructions prompt in the second person imperative. Now let's see what it comes up with. So system instructions, initial read through, detailed analysis, stakeholder analysis, second and third order effects, detection of malicious intent, and then it's going to come up with a really big outline. Now, what we've got here is essentially the ingredients for custom GPT. So I'm going to copy this and let's go into the GPTs and create one. And we're going to call this Legislative Review GPT. Review legislation and provide analysis. And we're just going to paste in that giant block of text. Review this PDF of legislation. Review this legislative text. Let's give it a couple of easy buttons for user to press. And we're going to go ahead and turn off image generation. You don't really need that. And we can give it an icon, maybe, if we want to. I don't know that we need to for this. We'll go ahead and hit create. And I'm going to put it, for now, is anyone with the link, just as a starting point, because we want to test it. So we've done prime, we've done augment, many steps to it, and we've done refresh and had it spit out system instructions. Let's go ahead and say, review this PDF of legislation. And it will ask me, you need to give me the PDF. So let's go ahead and upload a PDF. And what do we got here? I don't have those in the right place. All right, let's attach, go into my legislation folder. I put somewhere. There it is. Let's go ahead and evaluate Tennessee's Elvis Act. This is the recent act that Tennessee passed to reduce deepfakes. And let's see what it comes up with. Purpose and intended outcome: to update and expand the protection of personal rights. Scope and impact across media. Section by section breakdown. We've got a nice breakdown of the act here. Adds voice, clarification of complex language, stakeholder analysis. So we have key stakeholders, individuals, especially those with public personas, such as celebrities and personal figures, entertainment and advertising industries, technology companies. Interests and influences. Individuals desire stronger protections and control over their personal identifiers. Industries concerned about compliance costs and restrictions on creative use. Tech companies may need to adjust practices to avoid liability under new definitions. Fiscal impact assessment. Costs, potential increase in litigation. Funding sources not explicitly mentioned. Economic impact, short-term costs for compliance and potential reduction in unauthorized commercial activity. Long-term benefits through clear legal standards and protections. Cost-benefit analysis. Compliance, constitutional and legal situations, legal precedents, review of similar laws, public reactions, likely strong among individuals, bipartisan support possible given the focus on individual rights. Opposition may stem from economic impact on specific industries, contingency planning, risks in unintended consequences, potential increase in litigation, challenges in enforcement with advanced technologies. Consultation and transparency, second and third order effects, the things that could happen, detection of malicious intent, no immediate red flags, historical context ensures protection aligns with these. So this one goes through and it says, there's going to be some compliance challenges because the tech companies are going to get beaten up a little bit on this, but it seems like it's okay. Let's do another one. I'm going to start in my legislative review. I'm going to attach this time. This is something that is absolutely abhorrent. This is from 1939. This is the Arizona Code of Law. This is a specific section of the Code of Law that deals with things like marriage. And specifically, Arizona back then, this was overturned in 1962 and amended, but this was essentially who was allowed to get married, and things like interracial marriages were not allowed. So if our software is working correctly, it should flag this is kind of a problem. So let's see what we got here. We have stakeholder analysis, key stakeholders, individuals seeking to marry, legal professionals, religious institutions, government agencies, interests and influences. Religious institutions may seek to ensure that customs are respected and included in the definition of those authorized to solemnize marriage. Individuals seeking to marry, government agencies, fiscal impacts, administrative stuff, constitutional and legal considerations, review of legislative historical rights, public reactions likely varies, contingency planning, monitoring, evaluation, consultation, second and third order effects, ensuring no this legislation provides a comprehensive framework for regulating marriages in Arizona. While generally aligned with constitutional principles, certain provisions, especially those concerning racial restrictions, may require review and possible amendment to ensure compliance with contemporary standards of equality and non-discrimination. I would vote this a fail. I would vote this a fail because in our system instructions, we had specifically said to look for certain types of risk mitigation. So let's go back to our system instructions now and see what's in here, right? So this was our original comprehensive framework. Let's go into our legislative GPT, go into our edit mode, and take a look at all the things that are in here. We, based on its performance just now, we need to strengthen the portion which says, like, transparency and accountability, evaluate whether the legislation intentionally or unintentionally discriminates, particularly along protected classes. Protected classes are defined as, and we need the legal definition for protected classes, which is race, ethnicity, religion, gender, national origin, disability, and veteran status. So those are all things that it should be checking for in its detection of malicious intent. This emphasizes a really important part of building these kinds of prompts. This testing part, this evaluation part, you can't skip it. You can't just roll it out and say, this is probably pretty good, because we're seeing here, there are issues with its first pass. Let's take a look through it and see if there's anything else in here that it could have done a better job of. Okay. Updated stakeholder analysis to specifically report on tailored provisions for specific groups of people or disadvantages likely to be created against specific groups, especially marginalized groups. Now we can take our GPT back, not exceed more than 8,000 characters. Okay, let's go ahead and put this back in. I removed this for our testing phase, the example that was given, which removed about 3,000 characters. Let's go ahead and hit update. And now let's do another test. So we're going to start off with our legislative review GPT. Let's give it the text. So this time through, with the analysis, it came up with and flagged that this thing is a big old problem, which is the intended effect. So we went through and edited our code. We're now in the evaluation stage. Let's do one more. We're going to start a new chat, and we're going to have it review a PDF. This time, we're going to give it the most recent. This is Bill HR's 8373. This is the Right to Contraception Access bill that is in the House and Senate. This has not been passed into law yet. At least I don't think it has. This is the time of this recording. So it's going to review it. Let's look at the scope, sectors affected, detailed analysis, definitions, findings, permitted services, applicability, enforcement. Who is directly affected? Individuals seeking contraception, healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, indirectly affected, advocacy groups, state governments, etc. Supportive stakeholders, opposing stakeholders. Tailored provisions explicitly protects the rights of marginalized groups and prevents state laws from limiting access based on personal beliefs of healthcare providers. Financial implications, compliance and enforcement by the Attorney General. Alignment with constitutional and protected classes. Consultation with advocacy groups. So this one comes out clean. One of the things that happens with a lot of laws, particularly in the United States of America, is a lot of stuff gets attached to them, riders and things that eventually end up making the law either less effective or having those unintended consequences. So having the ability to have at least a fix. So we're back to the P in pair, right? We're going to prime it. It's going to give us some stuff and have it build our scoring rubric. So now we've got a nice scoring system. Great. Next, convert this scoring rubric into a prompt for a large language model like ChatGPT. The purpose of the scoring rubric is to assign numerical scores to a piece of legislation submitted and evaluated under the framework. Alter the existing framework to incorporate the scoring rubric such that the system instructions provide a detailed analysis of the 14 parts of the framework, then provide scoring for each part, then provide a score for the legislation out of the total number of points. Here is the existing framework again. Convert it into system instructions written in the second person imperative. Now we give it back the instructions just to make sure that it knows this is the priority. Okay, let's copy this. So we are now at 6,628 characters. Let's go to our custom GPTs. Go to our legislative ones, edit. And we are going to paste back in that new version of this prompt now with a really nice scoring rubric. Let's view it and let's give it a go. Let's give this now, review the PDF legislation. We're going to give it the House bill again on right to contraception. And we'll see how it does. Let's do it one more. Let's go back to our legislative review. Let's give it, yes. Let's give it the Elvis Act. It seems that at least along with this particular scoring rubric and system instructions, it did pretty well. So this is the process, right? This is the process. If you want to make use of this custom GPT, I'll give you the URL for it. You're welcome to share it freely. It's a public service, it's a public good. You're welcome to take the system instructions themselves and edit them and build your own, because again, the more people who are reviewing legislation, the better. I think it's a vital civic good that is important. This is how you bring the PARE framework to life in a more advanced way, a more thoughtful way, as well as how you can build a high quality prompt you can reuse and share, because now we've taken this 6,000 character prompt, this gigantic prompt, and built it into software, right? We built it into a GPT that anyone could use. That's how we're going to scale the use of generative AI. We're going to go from doing stuff to systematizing prompts to building apps that perform that function. But it's really important that we do so with transparency, that we do so with allowing people to see how it works, right? This is not the end of the process. This is just the technology. You still want to do the rest of the 5P framework, the governance around this sort of thing. It's a piece of software. How are you going to maintain it? How are you going to provide updates to it? Who should have access to it? What do you do when someone complains that it doesn't do what they want it to do? How are you going to handle all that stuff? So all that is also in the file. And yeah, this is 900 words. So this is not a short prompt. But for something as important as legislative review, you'd want to have it be good and beefy. So what else happened this week? In the live stream this week, we talked about how to use generative AI tools of all sorts to level up your podcasting workflow. We talked about editing stuff, writing summaries, cleaning up transcripts and things. So go check that episode out. It was a lot of fun. That's the first of a 3-part series on using generative AI in podcasting. Plus other articles this week we had why being first matters in business strategy, IT and infrastructure in generative AI, and then knowing the Zapier, VP of Marketing at Hustlewing, and a VP of Growth at Verblio. So that's going to do it for this week's newsletter. It's a little longer than normal because we wanted to show this process of using the PARE framework. But I hope that it gives you the tools you need to really advance your prompting, to take it from, a paragraph or two of instructions to entire frameworks that you can use to build applications and provide them to your users. And really, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you want to know when new videos are available, hit the bell button to be notified as soon as new content is live.